rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I will call the meeting to order. Jeff, is there any change to the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only changes is that Bruce Kimmel is not joining us in person. He's going to be joining us via Teams.
Okay, all right. I need approval for the agenda?
Oh,
go ahead.
Committee reports, is that gonna be in there?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
that's not,
I didn't have one, so I didn't even notice it wasn't in there.
that's not on, at least the agenda that I have, it's not on there.
Okay. All right, with that change, could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Tom moves.
I'll second.
Steve seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board in public comment? All right. Is there anything we want to pull from the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Okay, Dave moves.
I'll second.
Steve seconds. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, Mike? It's gonna be short.
Yep, it's one today. Good morning. Today, for employee recognition in the Sheriff's Department, we have Amanda Strickland, who's a dispatcher jailer who began the full-time position on August 13th.
Thank you, Mike. And welcome to Amanda. All right. Maria, do you want to come forward?
Sure.
Jeff, do you want to explain?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The assessor position is an appointed position, appointed for a 4-year term. And Maria Shepard was appointed to fill the remainder of the term from our previous assessor. And so this appointment would be for the 4 years beginning January 1, 2025. And we have to do a little bit of a oath of office with this process. So we would need a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make the motion.
Approve Maria's appointment.
Okay, and Steve will second. For discussion, I'll just say we're very happy with what you are doing, and we're thrilled that we can appoint you again.
Well, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so oath of office.
All right. Right hand, sorry. Doing great so far.
No judgment, no judgment. I, Maria Shepard, do swear and affirm that I support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will be diligent, faithful, and impartial in the performance of duties of the office of County Assessor for the County of Hubbard in the State of Minnesota, to the best of my judgment and ability in accordance with the law. I do. Thanks.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. And then Maria, we just need to
Sign it.
enter your signature.
Do you want a certain color? Doesn't matter.
Blue or black? Same as in your office.
Red or purple?
No.
Or green. Or green. Awesome. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Okay. Veteran Services, come on up.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to give you what's going on up in our office right now. So in the office right now, we're still really busy with the PACT Act claims, which I think we talked about that last time. They expanded the PACT Act now to include any veteran that was exposed to any toxic exposure whatsoever in the military. So it made all of them eligible for health care and possibly compensation benefits. So we've been very busy doing that. The Bemidji Vet Home update, they got their full accreditation through the VA. They're not at full operating capacity right now. They're still waiting to get staff so they can support opening up full. Right now, they have 24 residents. We completed the homestead exclusion list. We vetted 291 eligible vets in the county. For 2023, we had 5.7 thousand office visits. We did 53 service officer reports for various county agencies, including the nursing homes, different churches, and different groups. We did 47 outreach events, reaching about 846 veterans and their families. And right now in the office, we have 207 active compensation claims that we're tracking. For the FY 2020, or 2023 Geographical Expenditure Report was released by the VA. For our county, our current veteran population is 1,867. We've done 13.8 million in compensation benefits just into our county, 83,000 in death benefits to surviving spouses, and 14.3 million in medical care benefits to vets in our county. We calculated up our expenditures, and for every dollar spent to operate our office, we bring about $162 back into the community. We've also been on the state side of using the State Soldiers and Assistance Program, which is a Minnesota Department of Veteran Affairs program created to help veterans who may need dental, optical, or special needs grants. From January to June of this year, we've been awarded 14.2 thousand under that benefit to veterans just in our community.
How long is it taking to process claims?
On the federal side or the state side?
How about both?
Okay, so on the federal side, it really just depends on the claim. If we're talking Blue Water, Navy, Vietnam claims, those could take quite a while. Those could be, a year process. But the average that we're seeing is probably 5 to 8 months to adjudication.
So are they able to get care in the meantime?
Usually, yes.
Okay.
With the PACT Act, it increased our ability to allow veterans to enter into VA healthcare system. There's 2 separate programs. So that a lot of our business was allowing veterans to get back into the program because of toxic exposure. The PACT Act effectively said if any veteran, no matter what branch, no matter how long you served, if you believe you were exposed to toxins, you could submit a claim for health care, and then that could be adjudicated. Some of those adjudications can take a while, but most of them are running pretty smoothly. We've got a great relationship with Fargo, so it's working out well with that.
Is that in any situation, whether you're in a war area or not?
Doesn't matter.
Yep, there's nothing saying you have to be in a war area.
Yep. Even the National Guard, if they've been, and we've discussed before, the National Guard unfortunately are treated a little bit different. They have to be called up normally for federal time. But in this instance, if you were called up for your 2 months and you believe you were exposed to a toxin, you could get into VA healthcare. So that's part of it, what's really kept us busy, is all these veterans. And with our outreach, we've been getting the word out there. So we're pretty proud of that.
So do they still go through TRICARE with VA healthcare, or is that totally different?
That's a very different program. TRICARE is a more federal retired military program. And VA is healthcare, not insurance. TRICARE is actually insurance.
Yeah, I know it is
Yep.
insurance,
Mhm.
yeah, okay. Any other questions before we go on? Okay.
Other things, just to brief a little bit, is our population of veterans unfortunately has been going down, but we can see that our compensation and our benefits to the surviving spouses has gone up. So again, we're very fortunate that you allow us to do the outreach that we do to make sure that our county is informed and make sure that they apply for the benefits they've earned. Again, I've always stressed this, these benefits weren't earned, they're not given to anybody. So I think that what makes us different, that's what allows us to come to work in the morning. It's our passion to make sure we help those individuals.
So are they able, Jerry, I forwarded you from the dental care?
The dental one, yep.
Are they able to access care through that, or it does not work well with the VA program?
That's a different program. With the State Soldiers and Assistance Program, some of the veterans on low income, because unfortunate, the State Soldiers and Assistance Program, and I say unfortunate because I think all veterans should be treated equal, but they're not. They look at lower income. It looks at asset and it looks at monthly income, so they have to meet a specific threshold. So it doesn't meet all the veterans' needs. We've seen several times, and it's one of the most difficult parts of our job, is when we have a veteran come in, that they're just above that threshold and we can't help them. And then the federal side, unless you have a severe disability, they're not able to access dental. So then I look at, as a community as in a whole, I appreciate those types of dentists who can provide services to lower income populace. So it's great that we do have that dentist in the area, and we look forward to looking to see if we can assist all our community and forward our veterans and their dependents to that program as well.
I have a question. If my son doesn't use his education benefits, VA GI Bill, I think it is, can his wife make use of it?
No, well, if he's still in, he
Maybe.
can transfer, so yeah, it's a maybe. You have to still be active duty to transfer your
gotta be active
GI Bill
duty.
benefits. If
Okay.
you've already gotten out of the military, it's locked in, that's it, there's nothing you can do.
A lot of these benefits, unfortunately, and I did 30 years, Aaron did 20, they don't teach you a lot while you're inactive. You're thinking, geez, I just want to get out and go home. And specifically with the GI Bill, if he would have transferred 1 month of his eligibility out of the 36 months or 40 months, depending on what program he was able to apply for, he could transfer his benefits to her. But if he does not do that, you have to do it. Aaron's correct. You have to do it when you're active duty.
He's got that benefit and it's going to waste, and that's what I was wondering.
You can still use
There's a
it.
lot of vets in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
This is why it's important, if you know any veterans out there, or actually active duty that are still there. And we've been seeing this. We got a veteran that's coming in next week. He retires September 1st. He's smart enough to come to our office before he signs his retirement paper. They got to come in. We got to let him know. It's not too late. If it's a week before discharge, we can still give him a little bit of brief. And Aaron's been very busy with that. I'm really proud of the fact that when Aaron came in 2 years ago, he's really brought in a younger population. As much as I try to, I don't know how to say it. I guess I'm just an old guy. I'm between the Vietnam vets and the younger vets. He has a connection with them that I just don't have. So it's good to see that he's getting these younger veterans in. And I believe we are. Even our population's going down, I think. And these are 2023 numbers, so I think 2024, there's a potential, well, we're losing a lot of veterans too, the Vietnam veterans guys, but the younger guys are definitely coming back to the community.
Well, we thank you for your work. It's very important.
Thank you.
Any questions about the budget for 2024, 2025?
Are you getting the outreach grant again?
We did. I received that 2 weeks ago, so that's good. The majority of the expenses that we use for the grant is outreach, a little bit of promotion and travel. One of the largest parts of our budget is transportation to training events. And I think that's important because, as you well know, things change all the time on the local, state, and federal level. And the only way that we can keep up to date, and we could do it telewise, but gosh, I really do like sitting down at a desk and seeing the instructor up in front of you. And I think that's important because then you get that discussion with other counties.
The networking, yeah.
The networking definitely works.
When do you anticipate having the administrative staff?
I'll let Aaron address that. The administrative staff, the second position potentially.
Oh, well, we've been talking about that for the last few months. I think we're gonna pull the trigger on it pretty soon.
We'd like to. It depends on the budget. If you take a look at the numbers, and every 6 months, our county, the Disabled American Veterans, allows me to put out a thank you luncheon. And if you take a look at the amount of volunteers that we have within our community, it adds up to almost 500 or over 500 hours a year. That's a quarter of a full-time person. And all those individuals assist us in the office. If we were to lose those individuals, the majority of them are a little bit older. If we were to lose it, it would definitely have an impact on our office. We would continue to get the work done. That would not falter. It's just that there's other things that, I don't want to say that we're kind of stalled in how much more we can do, but the glass is pretty full.
The glass is full. It's definitely a needed position, just with the numbers of, a year ago, if I would have said 200 active claims, we would have said, no, that can't be right. But
That's
now it's
crazy.
nothing for us to have well over 200 active ones in our office at any given time.
When we
And
had,
with the phone ringing,
Yeah.
just non-stop. Monday we had,
37 contacts. That's a lot.
that's just, it's becoming a daily thing.
Yeah.
to see our numbers that high.
And we don't mind it. We'll get the work done. We enjoy it.
No
It's
doubt.
great to have a challenge. It's nice to look up and say, oh, it's 4:15. But it would be a nicety. Yes, sir.
So when Jerry brought his budget this year and we talked ahead of him submitting this, he said, eventually we're gonna need a part-time person to keep up with the workload that we have. And I said, well, let's put it in this year's budget and have that conversation, and we'll see where that shakes out as we're working through. So you'll see the part-time salary and wage is showing a 20-hour-a-week position added to this office. That's in the 2025 budget request, and that's one of the no new positions we were gonna have for 2025, that's one of them.
Well, your budget's pretty lean.
I've always told you, I'm pretty conservative.
We don't need a lot.
I pay taxes too.
Yep.
So we want to spend our money responsibly. But and we're also proud of the $162 per dollar spent. Will that number go up? We hope to. We like bringing, if we can bring veterans programs to the county, I envision that it frees up funds for other individuals within the county. And as a whole, it makes our county stronger. So if we get a little bit more help, maybe that'll help as well.
Anything else for Jerry and Aaron? All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Highway, Andrea, and not used to seeing you just alone.
Yeah, not much longer, hopefully. So I just have a couple items this morning. The first one would be to approve the 5-year plan that we've had the public meetings on last week. 5-year plan, and then also approve the resolution for the continuation of the sales tax that supports the 5-year plan program. I can hear that in the back too, so I'll back up. I think if you have the resolution in front, I think that first paragraph really hits home of why this sales tax is important. With the transportation infrastructure being the backbone of the county's economy. I think that really hits home right there of why it's needed, why our roads are important, and why it's a good investment back into the road system.
We
So
cannot.
that,
we
yeah, so
can't
that's the
do
item
that.
we'll take up after the public hearing at 9:30.
9:30,
Oh,
yep.
I'm
So
sorry,
if you wanna start
apologize.
if you wanna start with B,
Yeah. Oh, that's all right, it was just in the line. B, okay. So the second item is the surveillance system for the Nevis shop. And we've been talking about this since I started, actually. They received some quotes from the same system that we use at the Public Works building. Same providers, same cameras. The only difference is that they have some exterior cameras now as part of this package. And it's, in my opinion, it's a good thing to have just because there's a lot of assets at that shop. There's probably over $1 million worth of equipment. There's the building, there's then also solid waste who's a part of this to have a camera on their dumpster that they have in that area. I've heard them talk about people dropping stuff that shouldn't be dropped there, and this would be maybe a deterrent or be able to track some of those people. So out of that number, that was $13,141, about $1,500 to $2,000 is solid waste portion for that camera specifically. But I did only go with the one quote because it is the same provider, and I'd like to work with the same company to have the same software and be able to access it even from the Public Works building, and not have to deal with multiple dealers on that software. And the hopes too is in our next year's budget we had for the system to be installed at our north shop too, for the same reasons. It's a lot of assets in these buildings that we don't have eyes on, that we don't know who's there after hours, who's, who even has door keys, you don't know. It's easy to make a door key copy, and it's just to have that security and that check is very good to have.
Board wishes?
I move to approve.
Okay, Tom moves to approve.
I'll second.
Ted seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, and then Andrew, you just want to wait?
Yeah,
and,
I can just wait.
And then Josh, it's not, you have 10 minutes, so we should be able to get yours done before the
Yeah, I'll
public
just,
hearing.
we'll just,
Thanks, Andrea.
yeah.
Good morning. Well, kind of on that same thread that Andrea just had with the camera system. I have a, find my spot here. Had received a quote to upgrade our camera system at our north transfer station. So about 5 years ago, we had put in our initial camera system up at the north transfer station. The DVR, the recording system, has kind of been, I guess I would say subpar. So working with the same company that the highway department's been using and we've been using with their cameras now in the Park Rapids transfer station, we're looking to upgrade our DVR recorder system and then add one more camera to our facility up there. So we received the one quote from Pro Custom and Security out of Detroit Lakes for $3,992. The only other thing I'd add is with this company, we don't pay a monthly service fee. In our previous contract, we have been paying a monthly service fee, so we'll be able to get rid of that, and in the long run, it'll hopefully save us some money as well, because we don't really see too many maintenance issues with the camera system that we have now. So in the camera systems for solid waste, I know especially in Park Rapids, we've been able to use for investigations a lot with our, unfortunately our fire claims and our accidents and other things that occur at our facilities. So they've been a very valuable asset to help with MCIT and insurance claims and things like that. So
These cameras recognize smoke or something like that to alert you to a fire?
these ones don't. I mean, I have been talking to this company about that technology, and that is really expensive or really costly. So, kind of been exploring some other options with that. But
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, Ted moves.
I'll second.
Dave seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Jeff, I'm looking at yours. I'm not sure there's anything we can do in 5 minutes.
There's nothing we can do in 5 minutes on any of this unless you wanted to jump forward and do some committee reports out of
Oh,
order.
yeah, we could do that. Does anybody have committee reports? Tom, do you, since you brought it up?
I didn't know if it was gonna be put on there. I have one meeting, what was that again? I was hoping I'd have a little bit of time to think about it.
Oh, well, does someone else have a committee report?
I can jump in.
Okay, go ahead, Ted.
There was one, this one, it's not on our committee report. It's the Headwaters Habitat Corridor Program. It's part of the Mississippi Headwaters Board. I joined one of their Zoom meetings to see the process that they go through for selecting parcels for acquisition and for easements. It was quite interesting, and they talk about, they have grading systems, the rack systems. With the Mississippi Headwaters Board, we're basically looking at the main stem of the river, but there's also tributaries in other areas. In Hubbard County, the sheep ranch was part of this program that they went through for the DNR to acquire that. So like I say, it was interesting. Another report in a committee I had, another thing I had, of course, was a 5-year highway plan that we're going to be discussing here. And then I had Northwestern Minnesota Juvenile Center. Basically, it was a executive board's meeting. We went over the financial reports, superintendent's expenses, touched on the programs, and we did update our emergency plan and procedures and one of the general policies. One thing we noticed with the emergency plan was that if there was a problem in the Sally Port, the emergency plan basically was sending people to that area. So we wanted to look at that, figuring if that's the area where the problem is, that it's the safe exits to get out of the building. But obviously, if there's a problem there, that's where we wouldn't be wanting to send people. And then we also talked about the host county agreement, went over the, I think I touched on this at a prior meeting. What we charge per day for member counties and non-member counties, we increase those quite a bit to keep up with, trying to keep our employees. We have a lot of good staff, but we were losing them to like the jails in Beltrami County and also Cass County social services and stuff. And the people, when they left, they said they would want to stay, but it was $1. You know, a lot of times it comes down to money. Can I afford to keep working here type of a thing? So like I say, that and for many other reasons, with the cost of everything going up, we had to increase our per diems every day for not only our host counties, but non-host counties also. And that's all I've got.
Teddy, are you gonna go to the Nielsen Spearhead open house?
That's on the 8th, as I recall.
Yeah, of September. I'm looking at an email I got from them. Is
Yep, I
anybody
was-
planning to go to that?
I was planning on that, yep.
Sounds interesting.
I'm just kind of curious, their driveway back there, it's not like for two people, two vehicles.
Oh.
So, and it's quite a distance, so it's gonna be curious if you get people trying to come in and going out at the same time. But there are a few spots where you can kind of pull over and people can get by. It's just, hopefully you recognize that need and when you do come upon somebody. But yes, I was planning on attending.
You have 3 minutes. Can you get it done?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have a whole lot, actually. We had with the Dancing Sky Council on Aging, we had a subcommittee of the board go through grants, you know, because I can't get into specifics of what's been granted to each of the requests because it has to be approved by a full board, which will be coming up later in the month. But it's less money because the COVID money is not available anymore. So we went through all of those, and then.
Are they gonna be able to make up the pot, or are they gonna have to do less services?
Well, it's going back to the budget schedule that came pre-COVID, like 2019. However, it is more than 2019. You know, I guess there's no really way to make it up. They just have to. Everyone's gonna have to live with less. And they kind of got used to the more money, but it's going back to the way it was. Well, then the only other one was the ambulance service. Did you want to cover that? We talking about possibly forming a district for the Walker ambulance service, which covers part of Hubbard County. And that, you know, give it taxing authority to pay for it because City of Walker doesn't have the money available anymore. That's about all.
All right, thanks. Well, I have less than a minute, so we might as well just wait.
I'd sneak in one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Yesterday, I was able to attend the Soil and Water Conservation Tour through RDO farms and look at what they're doing to be environmentally farming practices and sustainability, and then tour one of the storage facilities. And then also, we got a chance to tour the different parts of the Straight River too, and there was a program afterwards that to come on in with multiple speakers on groundwater and things like that, so it was very educational and very interesting to see the new technology from ground penetrating radar to moisture sensing ultrasound and stuff being used on the fields to not only make sure they're applying the right amount of fertilizer, but the right amount of water at the right places at the right time. And they can apply different amounts on each field in different areas, depending on how the soil is in a particular area. And the same thing is, technology is really advancing in pesticide spraying too, where they're actually using some drones in some parts of the country where they just go around and spot spray the needed areas. So, very interesting.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, I have 9:30, so I need a motion to go into the public hearing for the transit sales and use tax and the 5-year improvement plan.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Steve moves,
I'll second.
Ted seconds. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm learning the process. So I guess, first of all, thank you to you all who attended the meetings. I actually got a couple of emails back and very good feedback in terms of what projects we had included, and I guess the style of the meeting is one comment that they said they just liked, that it was just more of a discussion versus me talking at people. So I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully we can continue that 2 years from now. But maybe just some major highlights of the 5-year plan. I know you guys have had a chance to review it, but I think I could pull out the major projects that would be happening in the next 5 years. And that would be, next year, there's 2 very large major projects. One is our CASA 1 in the city limits of Park Rapids, and that will be a complete urban reconstruct of the road there. Very needed, curb and gutter, storm sewer, new city utilities, some sidewalk or trail, we're not quite sure, but lighting, very, very major improvement on that section of road. And then also next year on CASA 7 and 40, the roundabout at the intersection just north of Zorba's. That'll be also a major change to the road system. And then looking forward in the 5-year plan, we have CASA 23, which is a currently gravel surface. That will be improved to a bituminous surface with whatever we can come up with to make the footprint fit in that narrow stretch of road there with our consultant we have on board. And then the other major change would be our CASA 15 and CASA 6 just to the east of our Public Works building. That would be turning into a roundabout intersection versus a 2-way stop. So those are kind of the major, that would be visually changing projects of the 5-year plan, with some other minor pavement resurfacing and minor projects throughout there too. Yeah, that's a gist of the 5-year plan in less than 100 words. But the second part of that is getting back to this resolution to approve the transit sales tax, or the local option sales tax, as it's called. And it'd be approving it every 2 years, from my understanding, is how Hubbard County does it, and it's 0.5 cent on retail sales. And that money would be dedicated exclusively to the payment of capital costs of specific transportation projects or improvement designated by the county board, which would be the 5-year plan that you guys are designating. This resolution is for the Board of Commissioners to continue the local option sales tax, to supplement the road construction program, and then it also states that Hubbard County will continue to hold these public hearings on biennial even year basis. So 2026 would be the next round of the 5-year construction plan.
And that tax brings in
It's a-
almost 1.8 million? It's 1.7 something.
I averaged about 1.4 when I was putting the plan together, just because you throw a curveball, like COVID in there or something, and that's been just our average for we looked at the last 4 years, we kind of averaged throughout the year. So I always like to go a little lower, and that's the same with our state aid dollars in the 5-year plan. I used what we got this year, because it does increase, but you can never project what it's gonna increase. Kitson County last year saw a 7% increase. Hubbard County saw like a 2.5% increase. So it varies county to county to what you see. So yes, for average, I just use the same number through the 5-year plan.
I'll agree, like with the public outreach that we did, the recent meetings that were held. I think it was a informal, I guess would be a good word for it. One thing I guess I should have pointed out earlier on the agenda item report, I believe they have the wrong dates for the background information.
Oh,
They're showing June 6th and June 8th,
okay.
and it should have been obviously August here.
Yes, yep. The August meetings.
But otherwise, yeah, I think it was well received.
Great. It's good to hear.
Any other comments?
I'll move to approve approve the 5-year road plan and.
Have we had
continue the
public-
local
We have to do public comment
Yep.
first.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? All right, go ahead, Dave.
Now I'll move to approve the 5-year road plan and the collection of the local option sales tax.
I'll second.
Steve seconds. The one discussion I have is, I'm in favor of the transit sales and use tax because there's many people that don't live in Hubbard County that come in and out of our area, and so this is a way that we can help fund the roads that they use.
It's a very good comment. I appreciate that comment. There's actually a map that's available on our state aid website that shows the counties that do utilize either a sales tax or wheelage or both. Some counties do both. And it is a good point to make that there's a lot of tourism in this county. There's a lot of outside people coming into the county and they still use the roads. They're still putting wear on the roads. So it is kind of a direct, we're taking that money in, but we're also directly giving it back into our road projects or into the system that they continue to use.
If you look at the history of the road and bridge levy, it's kept it pretty stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually did a study in Kitson in terms of the amount of work versus the amount of money that we get in. And in the 80s is the last time that we saw that it was comparable of the costs of what it costs to do a project to what we were getting with state aid dollars. And now we'd need about 4 times the amount of state aid dollars to keep up with our roads systems is what we averaged when we did this, looking at the past costs in Kitson County. So I would assume it's pretty similar down here. The money doesn't go as far as it used to when you're paying $80 a ton for bituminous.
And not every county can benefit from something like this, because you have to have enough traffic through your county.
You do, and even, Couchiching County even uses local option sales tax, and they do benefit some more. Some choose to go to the wheelage tax if they only have a population base versus a tourism base, kind of the same, give or take, but what the money can be used on is a little different too per statutes too.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yes, and I should,
Go
maybe,
ahead.
is it closed or not?
No,
But,
well, I need a motion to are you
Oh.
gonna discuss something else?
It'd be for County Road 6, just a quick
Okay,
update
so
on that.
let me close the public hearing. I need a motion to close that.
Move.
Okay, Tom moves,
Second?
Ed seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry. County Road 6, I did get an update this morning from the contractor. They had a little bit of delay. They're in Todd County right now, and they were, with the rain, it's been a crazy summer for rain, you would never think, but they're gonna move their plant in tomorrow night and Thursday, and then we're gonna plan on starting Friday, Saturday paving. Starting in Hubbard, getting that surface down, both the base lift and the wear lift, the 2 lifts of bituminous, and then they're gonna move and do from 87 to 15, so the north section first, get that done, and then go do the south section. So we're very hopeful that it'll still be done before Labor Day, before the major traffic gets on again, so,
Good.
yeah.
All right,
Moving
thanks,
along.
Andrea.
Yes, thank you.
Jonathan?
On time and everything.
Pretty
Good
close.
morning.
Morning.
All right. Just looking at my. So yes, I'm here to present on 3 proposed amended ordinances and answer any questions that the board has. I'm gonna start with the tobacco ordinance. I think it's the shortest one. Well, the alcohol and tobacco ordinances are both relatively straightforward. And starting on the tobacco ordinance, I believe you have been provided both the old ordinance and the proposed new ordinance in your packet. In going through the tobacco ordinance, the main purpose of the amendment and the reason that I'm bringing it before you is the age discrepancy with state law and our previous or current ordinance, which penalizes or criminalizes the sale to a minor under 18. The state law, of course, has changed to 21, so the amended ordinance does reflect that, both criminalizing and making an administrative penalty depending on which way we decide to go.
for enforcement of the sale to anyone under the age of 21 and for anyone under the age of 21 to either possess, use, or attempt to purchase tobacco or nicotine products. I also amended it to include nicotine delivery products, which really is really targeting vaping products that a lot of underage, unfortunately, are utilizing in today's world. Otherwise, I did amend the administrative penalties. You'll see this in the alcohol ordinance as well. Our administrative penalty doesn't work very well in its current form, in that it has a 24-month expiration to enhance the administrative penalty. We do more than one compliance check a year, but generally speaking, we're required by law to do one compliance check for both alcohol and tobacco per year to help discourage underage sales. When we're doing one or even two per year and they only fail 1 out of 2 or so, we're running, it's usually 3 years and we have 2 penalties, but we can only utilize the first one, so it's not a subsequent when they have had a subsequent. So the amendment calls for a 36-month, in the tobacco ordinance specifically, a 36-month period of time where we're looking back to be able to increase the penalty if they failed within the 36 months. I can answer any questions to that, but administratively and actually practically enforcing, it makes a lot more sense to have a little bit more time for a look-back period to penalize those repeat offenders. I don't think I missed anything. Any questions on the proposed amended tobacco ordinance?
I guess, Jonathan, I guess not this ordinance specifically, but the 3 that you're presenting today.
Yeah.
I know that we've asked before to have the changes highlighted, usually redlined or something like that.
Sure.
And I would appreciate that, and I think maybe the residents would too, if that could be available for when it comes to public hearing. That way then they can see what the changes are but a lot of our public hearings, we don't have anybody from the public speaking anyhow, but I notice that in all the other boards and committees that I'm on, if we do policy changes and that's usually highlighted and
I can do that.
makes it easier.
That's a
for
fair
us.
question, fair request. I'll make that happen.
Thank you.
If we get a red line and a clean copy ahead of the public hearing, I'll put them on the website, and then we'll add them to the agenda for the 17th.
17th of September, right?
September.
Thank you. Yep, I'll make that happen.
I'm curious about the state law. I mean, it doesn't apply in Hubbard, but does that underage 21 apply to a military base?
No, I guess I shouldn't speak to that. I don't know for sure. I believe it does not. There are some specific rules for military bases where some of the state statutes generally do not apply to military as they're under federal law. And you'll see that in some of the exceptions in state law. Driver's licenses are a good example where the driver's license code under 171, there's an exception for military. It simply doesn't apply to them.
I was wondering the same thing, because I remember when they lowered this to 18.
Mm-hmm.
If you can serve in the military, you should be able to smoke.
Yeah, I think
And yeah, I couldn't speak to how they handle that, internally on a military basis, but
back when I was young, it was voting. You were to die for your country, but you couldn't vote.
and I would note, it's important, I think, for the public as well as the board to know that there is, the state statute, when they made it 21, to be able to legally smoke and purchase tobacco products and nicotine products, they did not criminalize juveniles or minors, anyone under the age of 21, possessing or using tobacco products. They criminalized anyone giving it or providing to a minor under 21, but they did not criminalize the actual possession on a juvenile or a minor, for that matter. There is a debate that I've had a lot of discussions with state officials on this particular point. I'll be honest, I disagree with them. I do think that there is a benefit to deterrence, and there actually being a penalty for the juvenile or the minor, 19, 20-year-old possessing it. And I think it does them a disservice to say you're not allowed to do this, but there's no penalty for doing it. That doesn't work from an enforcement standpoint, in my opinion. I think the Twin Cities particularly, where a lot of this is coming from, speaks for themselves as it relates to their idea of what it looks like to enforce against minors. I do feel that having that penalty is helpful to juveniles. And again, we're not, but we're not trying to throw the book at these kids. We have the diversion program here in Hubbard County for a reason, and that does not go on their record. They go through the diversion process and have that opportunity to keep these off of their records. But it does have a consequence, and I think consequences are helpful for society in general. That's my position, and that's why in this ordinance I recommend criminalizing and penalizing the possession and use of minors using tobacco and nicotine.
Thank you for saying that. That's one of the things, since we did it this way, I was wondering, I don't think there's there's a tobacco offender diversion program with the tobacco ordinance, but I didn't notice something like that in the cannabis or the alcohol ordinance.
As far as the diversion program?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I could easily put one in. The reason that it's in this one is it had previously been in it, and I just didn't take it out. But the alcohol and cannabis ordinances, the diversion program we have for youth here in Hubbard County would apply equally to all three.
Okay.
It just simply happens to be in the actual ordinance in the tobacco.
Yeah, and they're going to, then we'll jump to the cannabis ordinance. In section 1, the second paragraph, Hubbard County hereafter the county recognizes the risk adult sale and use of cannabis and cannabis products present to the health, welfare, and safety of members of the public, and in particular the youth of the county.
Sure.
I would like that paragraph added to the tobacco and the alcohol ordinance, because I feel it's speaking statistics and facts and my personal life experiences. Alcohol's a major problem. CDC talks about 22,000 people in America a year dying just from drinking too much alcohol, from alcohol poisoning. But then to try to find the risks of tobacco use and cannabis use, you don't die from smoking too much, but you do get the related health problems. But so like I say, that's where I thought this paragraph is important and should be in the other ordinances too, if the board feels the same way I do.
Under the purpose section of both ordinances.
I would support that, Ted, being on the hip. I've read numerous articles and we've had many discussions on how you're right, it possibly doesn't kill you, but the side effects into the diseases that it causes will end up killing you. Yeah.
And like I said, with the alcohol too, they talked about, that's just drinking too much alcohol.
Yeah.
If you factor in the health effects, I believe it went up to 178,000 people a year, and that's not including drunk driving deaths. So cannabis not being legal, I don't think all the effects have come to light.
Right.
And will it probably in the future. But with alcohol and the history that we have in this country with alcohol abuse, and I've made the comment before, it's the most used and abused drug in the world, and it is a drug. And like I say, I'm thinking about people in my past that are no longer here. I'm getting a little emotional, so I'm sorry.
No, you're making a good point as to why neither that or THC should be legal. Because at the end of the day, and I'm not arguing that they should not be legal, they are legal in the state of Minnesota at this point. But when you legalize an intoxicating substance for adults, juveniles have access to it, point blank. That's what will happen. And you're right, well, we don't know what those numbers are gonna look like yet. We'll find out.
So I'm gonna segue into the cannabis, if that's
Yeah,
okay? Are
then we can
done
move
with
to the
tobacco
cannabis.
one? I have several questions on the cannabis. Under section 4, under suspension, what happens if the state investigation differs from the county? Can they override the suspension the county puts in place for business?
So that's a very, very good question, and it kind of goes to the overall nature of the ordinance itself and local authority. This is based off of the model ordinance that the
Yeah.
cannabis
Yeah.
agency provided to us. The short answer is my understanding, and this could be proven to not be accurate in the future. I'm not exactly sure how the cannabis board is going to interact with the different counties and local governments. I anticipate, based off of this model ordinance, that it should be a pretty good relationship. based on how they put this out. But the short answer is I believe that the state will have overriding authority.
That's what I thought.
And the cannabis, for specific to cannabis, which is the opposite of the alcohol ordinance, which the state has input, but ultimately local governments have ultimate authority. And the state has a little bit more authority than that, I suppose, in alcohol. But in cannabis, it is very clear, in my opinion, that it will be the state agency that has veto authority, ultimately.
In section 6, could you give me an example of a temporary event that would be licensed?
An event at the park, at Heartland Park, for instance, not to pick on any particular event out there, but let's say the Dog Day festival that they have out there, I think annually or a couple of times this summer, they could ask for a temporary permit to be able to utilize THC products.
If we said no, could the state override us in that?
If they went through, I believe they could, yes.
Okay, and then in section 7, it talks about private property and what you can do there. If I'm a parent or a guardian and I would like to give my child, anybody under 21, a THC product, as long as it's on my private property, do I have the right to do that without penalty?
No, you do not. Anyone under the age of 21, it technically, it arguably is a petty misdemeanor under current Minnesota law, under Chapter 342. The issue with the legislature on that particular chapter is they made some conduct illegal, but then they didn't penalize it. And they said in that ordinance that the cannabis agency has the authority to enforce this entire chapter. Now we have been going forward, and I think a lot of counties in the state have been going forward with petty misdemeanor citations for this type of behavior, with the understanding that if something is not otherwise defined under law as to what the penalty is, it's a petty misdemeanor under Chapter 609. That has not been answered whether or not that's legally correct yet. But the short answer is, under 342, it specifically says you cannot provide THC products to anyone under the age of 21. And it does not make an exception for your children or anyone else. There is no exceptions.
And then my last question is, I noticed in the alcohol, the liability insurance had to be filed with us.
Sure.
There's nothing said in the cannabis. Will there have to be a liability insurance filed with the state for the place that sells, or was that just neglected by the state?
I believe that, and working off of this, that's an excellent question as well. My memory is that it is required, but I can't place why that is.
Yeah, and I can't and I might have missed it in here, but I don't think I did. Okay.
That's something that's gonna need to be a part of it, one way or the other. I'll look into that. That's a great question.
Other questions?
Yeah, regarding limiting the registrations to one every 12,500, so once this becomes effective, and we're kind of already at that limit, aren't we?
Yeah, in Hubbard County, practically speaking, that would be one. And again, that's a policy decision for the board to consider whether or not one is enough, or if you would like to allow for more. The way that it's written right now is one, but that's just a starting point for you to discuss and determine what you would like to do.
So we could have
And just a note on that side, just for the public, Minnesota is the only state in the United States not leaving this decision up to local government.
A good example is Colorado. I think all but 4 counties opted out
Yep.
in Colorado
Yep.
when they legalized. Minnesota did not give counties that authority.
So likely, I can see more than one applying for a license here, so we're gonna be.
I'd be very surprised if it was not more than one. Correct.
We'd be choosing one. Unless a city does something different, then they could do their own thing. Correct?
Yes, excuse me, that is correct, yes.
So
Knocked on my throat.
one thing that I know counties are considering doing is reaching out to townships and cities and asking them if they're intending to take action, or if they're intending to follow the county's lead relative to this ordinance. If the city of Akeley opted out and said they want to do their own thing, they could have limits that would be outside of the county's general limits. But if they opted into ours, and ours was limiting the number of retailers, then they would let us regulate that for them. So there's gonna be an opt-in, opt-out opportunity for the cities and the townships, I believe, coming up with this.
And then talking to some other counties, they're doing, when they are opting in, they're doing that through a joint powers agreement.
And that might lead to my question. In the alcohol ordinance, under section 5 jurisdiction, this ordinance shall apply to all unincorporated areas within the county of Hubbard, state of Minnesota. But it's different in the cannabis one, where we're gonna be listing the cities and townships. They're gonna,
That's because the statutory authority relative to cannabis legalization is different than
that's
than
what I,
liquor.
like I
Yep.
said, that's what so the state won't allow something broad like this that's in the alcohol ordinance.
The state doesn't limit the number of alcohol licenses. They provide the criteria by which they can be granted. So they're not limiting them based on population, so that the regulation is different. The mechanism has to be different as well.
Okay.
And yeah, that section in the alcohol ordinance is related to not overstepping the local authority of cities. I mean, Park Rapids has their own alcohol authority, Akeley does, Nevis does as well. In the cannabis ordinance, that is dealt with by the beginning, in section 1, where I just have 3 lines. That is where county accepts delegated retail registration authority from the following cities, townships. That is unknown at this point, which is why that's still blank. But it would look similar, honestly. I mean, it would be unincorporated areas unless they opt in, at which point we would then take their authority for incorporated areas. But it would look about the same, actually.
So what's considered an unincorporated area?
Something that's not a town or a city.
So, well, so townships,
Townships are unincorporated.
unincorporated?
Yep.
Okay. So, but
Of course,
when,
it's a village, wouldn't that
would-
classify as a city?
would they then have the
But it's
authority
not incorporated. Okay.
to open up their own cannabis shops or allow it in a township?
I do not believe townships, well, I'll have to look at that. I don't believe so, but I'm not sure on that question.
For the 28
I
townships?
think it's only cities and towns
Okay.
that have the authority, but I could be wrong on that
I'll have
issue.
to confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's concerning.
Yes, because I could see some townships probably allowing more than,
I do think to some extent this cannabis board is utilizing the current structure of alcohol enforcement. They're not exactly following it, but to some extent they are. And if you look at alcohol sales, townships don't have retail authority. And, I mean, townships don't have the authority to license alcohol. And I would assume it's gonna be the same with cannabis. I believe it is already, but I'll double check to make sure. I think it's incorporated towns and cities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So moving on to, I'll kind of jump over to the alcohol ordinance real quick. As I did a couple of changes on that. If you look at the old, there's just a couple of housekeeping matters, really. If you look at the current ordinance right now, and you look at the table of contents, section 17, 16, 17, 18 were out of whack. So that is corrected in identifying what those exact sections are. Overall, I made a couple of proposed changes. The first of which, of course, was requested by the board, and that was changing the 1,000 feet to 50 feet to mirror that of the cannabis ordinance. So that is changed in there. I also, again, amended or proposed a change to the administrative penalties. Not so much that the penalties themselves changed, but the ability to look back and penalize repeat offenders is changed to include, I believe, waived 3 months of school, so I'm looking at the wrong spot here. So if you have 5 violations within a 60-month period, instead of a 2-year period, having 5 violations in a 2-year period is simply, it's not possible. We just don't do that many compliance checks. So it just is in line with how many violations and the period of time that would have passed in that situation. I can answer any questions to that. It's a little easier to answer questions than just outright explain what the difference is. But the long and short of it is I've extended the look-back period, a period of time that matches the amount of violations that a facility or a business could have. I think I changed I know I did, I changed the language as far as how do we serve a business or entity with notice that they're in violation. That just includes that we can prove that in court with evidence that they actually knew. I included that as well, which is one of the rules in civil procedure. Anyway, but it just codifies it in the ordinance. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in there. I believe that is the extent of the amendments to the alcohol ordinance. Any questions on that?
Well, Jonathan, I'll bring up this question because you were at the HIP meeting when this was asked.
Sure.
Once again, my same example, I'm a parent, I have a minor in my house.
Sure.
Can I legally give them a drink?
Are they your child?
Yes,
Yes.
but not a friend's.
Not a friend, not anyone other than your child.
Okay, so that's how that differs from the cannabis.
Correct. Right now, cannabis, I don't know of the exception that you can provide to your own child yet. That could be changed, but I'm unaware of it at this moment. If no other questions, then the cannabis ordinance, we've gone over it a little bit already. The initial ordinance that we have on the books right now is really just regulating, as the board is aware, the restrictions on where it can be within churches, schools, et cetera, as well as the timing, which mirrors that of the alcohol ordinance, when it can be sold, when these businesses can be open. The new ordinance is based off of the guidance from the state. It does have the licensing authority. I did, just for clarification, use the same authority, the auditor that we do for the alcohol ordinance. That the board has the authority to pick anybody in the county to do that. I assume that mirroring that of the alcohol ordinance was kind of in line with what the board was thinking about doing. So that's why I put that in there. Obviously, there's a lot of requirements as it relates to applying for a license in cannabis. Again, this is guidance from the state and the agency, being the agency that's really going to be reviewing these applications with the county. So it just mirrors what the state had recommended that we utilize. I did not include one particular part of the model ordinance, and that was the final, just so the board's aware of it. Let me get to the right part here. Lower potency hemp edibles. I did not put a section in on that, so it goes retail establishments, temporary business or a temporary event, and then there's this lower potency hemp edible option that the board could look into or could do, which would allow for the sale of low potency hemp edibles with restrictions. The way that, with it just not being in there, it simply isn't available as an option for a retailer at this time. But if the board wanted me to put that in there, I could. I simply just didn't at this point unless the board wants me to. It was one of and they put it in as optional. Not every county needs to do that. It's up to the county, each individual county. Any questions on that? Obviously, the cannabis ordinance is, there's a lot to it, but it is the regulation of getting licenses, selling, being a business that sells THC products.
I believe, Jonathan, that the edibles aren't even regulated as far as amounts right now, so to me, don't even put it in because we don't even know how to regulate it because the state hasn't said anything on that.
I appreciate it. I agree with that as well. Thank you.
I do have one question about,
Yes, Steve.
like the THC enhanced drinks that are served like in liquor stores and things like that. Is all that under the alcohol?
Currently, it's under the alcohol
Is
ordinance.
that gonna, the theory would be that they would just try to make them stronger, more potent.
I think that's fair. At this point, I am by no means an expert in the mix between THC and alcohol. There's a couple of people at the state, and I think our liquor store operators are more of an expert than I am. I get a lot of information from them as to what they can and cannot do with these new state regulations. Right now, it is fully under the alcohol, our ordinance as well as state law on how that's regulated. The new cannabis ordinance and state statute doesn't address it, really.
Okay.
It's all under the alcohol. I think that might change. That's gonna kind of evolve as new retailers, new manufacturers come out with new products. As all law does. We change the laws all the time because something new comes out.
I know that the cannabis ordinance changed, I think it went from 4 pages to 9, but I know the state only allows us to do certain things, and I know that probably next year they'll have some other changes.
Yeah.
And we'll probably be back tweaking the ordinance again, but.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. I will say, to the state's credit, with their model ordinance, they did give the counties a little more authority than I thought they were going to. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. But understanding that they still have ultimate authority when it comes to cannabis, which that is what it is at this point.
So in looking at the agenda, it says to approve amendment to the ordinance and then to set the date, but don't we approve these after the public hearing?
We'll just be setting the date for a public hearing for proposed ordinance amendments, 4627 and 42.
I was looking for board consensus to go forward with what was gonna be presented to the public today.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of things to change here with the highlighted changes. Put in the purpose, for protecting youth in all 3 ordinances, and anything else I can put in there as well, but those are the 2 I have at this time.
Sounds good.
And I had 2 other additions. One, we're gonna provide a red line copy, and 2, we'll verify whether townships are organized or unorganized relative to the cannabis legislation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we need a motion, right, to set the public, or just a consensus?
Is there a consensus to bring these roughly in these forms forward for consideration, or if they need administrative changes if you think that the changes recommended now are administrative changes, that's fine. So we'll and then if you're trusting us to make those changes and present them as the ones that we're gonna bring for the public hearing, then you can just make a motion to set the date for the public hearing on the revised 42, 46, and 27.
Is the board fine with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I am too. Okay, a motion to set the public hearing?
And it'll actually, because it's 3 ordinances, you can make 1 motion, but we will have 3 public hearings.
Yep.
All right,
And was the proposed date September 17th?
yeah,
Yep.
at 9:30.
Need that as a motion?
Okay,
Okay, so
Ted
moved.
moves, okay,
Second.
and Dave seconds. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Okay, Eric. CUP application?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So I have one agenda item for the board this morning, and that is the amendment application for an existing conditional use permit. It's by Mike Solien. This permit was first approved by the board in January of this year. And what is being requested is to amend the 9th condition on that permit that deals with the septic system and the requirement that it be installed before the operating permit for the CUP can be issued. What prompted the amendment is, as the applicant dug into that original septic design, working with some other contractors, realized that it wasn't real feasible for installation. It would result in the tanks being set too deep. And so they came up with another design that instead of having 2 separate septic systems with one close to the lake, they've proposed a single system now, which complies with the ordinance and negates the need for the variance that was granted last year to allow 2 systems. And it places that system in the far southwest corner of the property, which is as far from the lake as you could locate a drain field. So that went through the planning commission. They recommended unanimously approval of the amendment as proposed, and then they placed kind of 4 sub-conditions, would be the best way to explain it, on what they recommended for approval, and then have 3 findings of fact that they presented for the board as well. The septic design has been received. We sent that to a civil engineer who is also the head of the state's septic system continuing ed and training program, and he reviewed that and said that it met all the requirements, so the design has been approved that we have on file. And both Mr. Solien and his septic installer are present if you would have any questions with them.
Well, I will open discussion. I talked with several people that were opposed to us approving this. I'm trying to find it because I found it yesterday, but Chair Veronica in the BOA talked about how the only thing that was addressed is condition 9. And most of the people from the public wanted several other things addressed. And so first of all, in our ordinance, this is all we can talk about is the condition 9. And I talked with Eric on length about why the other issues weren't relevant to this. So I'll say that. Secondly, people are frustrated because in this plan, there would no longer be remote hookups. That all of them then would be a hookup for service. But to me, by getting rid of the shower house and the bathroom and instead giving full hookups, to me seems like it would be a gentler way of using the septic system, because I actually think there would be less wastewater going through. And if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but if I'm taking a shower in my camper versus the shower house, I'm gonna take a longer shower in the shower house. So just logically speaking, that was my, the Board of Adjustment addressed the variance that's no longer needed, and so that would be taken care of. The moving from the drain field closer to the lake to way back, it just seems like a win-win to me. And when I talked to Eric, we talked about how this system will be much better in monitoring the water usage. And long-term, that this can be monitored long-term. Personally, I think this is a plus. This seems like a much better system, and when I talked with Eric and he explained the things that were done, and then, Eric, who was it from the University of Minnesota that's approved this system?
Dave Gustafson is the gentleman's name.
I left that sheet of paper at home, and Eric was saying he actually teaches on this, and so for him to approve this system says a lot for it. So I'm in favor of the changes, and I think the Board of Adjustment did a great job of the finding of the facts.
Yeah, I'll agree, and it seems like it's an improvement.
It sounds like he's gonna be leaning more towards seasonal sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess I would defer to let Mr. Solien answer that for you. That's my understanding, but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
It's just that, from my own experience with cabins going from a resort to an HOA, is that there's far less use from the owners of the cabins, and it would be the same way with seasonals. They're up on weekends. When you have a campground that's in and out every week, even every day, you're gonna have some heavy use. So that's what I was wondering about this. That when the average flow for a campground daily is 35 to 40 gallons per day, is that from a campground that's used on a tourist basis, or is that seasonal, or a combination? Or how do they come at that?
I don't have those details. Potentially, Mr. Yelenemy, the contractor that would do the work, who's here, has some experience in other campgrounds that he's worked with as to possibly being able to answer that question for you, Tom.
It would just seem that with a seasonal campground, you can easily fall in that range or even less. is what I would think.
Yeah, what I can say in general, when we do receive measured flow data on systems, differing types of systems, it's thus far my observation that the measured flow is usually half or less of what the rules would require for a design flow on a new system. So they definitely have plenty of margin built into those.
Yeah, that's where I'm in favor of, he's gonna be measuring how much he's using, and if a 3,200 gallon flow is going to be suitable for the full 39 sites, that would be fine. And also, I'm in favor of, it's all going to be connected to one site now, as the ordinance would like to see, and also further from the lake.
Mhm.
Steve, did you have any comments?
Just that, my only question was, how long is the data going to be recorded and reported? I mean, is it gonna be for the life of the campground, or is it gonna be for a period of 5 years? Gather the data, make the assessment, and then make any changes that would be necessary?
Yeah, good question. So with this type of system, the septic rules require that there be flow measurement on the system and that data be collected for the life of the system with the Planning Commission's recommendation. As far as submitting that to the county, their recommendation states that after the first year of operation, that would be turned in, and then also for the second year prior to the Group 2 potentially being tied into the system. And then thereafter, it would be on a as-needed basis. So if the county had reason to say, hey, we want to see that data, then the applicant could provide that to us. Otherwise, it's in his best interest to continually maintain that after those first couple of years where we want to see it for ensuring that the expansion is going to stay within the system design capacity. Because if he ever has any issues, that's the easiest way to identify them before they get to be a larger, more expensive problem.
I have a follow-up question to that is, you're gonna start out with 24 sites and the monitoring the system. Now, once he adds the other remaining sites and the cabin, would you want more measured data to see if the full 39 sites in the cabin are under that 32 flow?
Yeah.
You would want to get data again then, after those additional sites are put in? Okay. Is that already written into that number 9?
The Planning Commission's, as worded, would require it for after the first 24 sites are placed, that first operating season, we'd get the data for that, and then for the following operating season, we would receive the data. And then it doesn't specify, that would need to be submitted after that, but, from a procedure standpoint within the department, before any of the remaining sites would be brought online, we'd want to see that to be able to verify that, we're still within the system's capacity.
Would you want to see that written into number 9?
Sure, I mean, it's not gonna hurt anything.
Well, it
Once
makes
you
it
get a decent
enforceable.
sample size from the first 24, adding another 9 or 10 sites likely is not gonna change anything. You can interpolate how much they're gonna add based on the results of the first 24. I
Yeah,
can't imagine there being a significant change. Now, the cabin might be a different matter, that you'd wanna watch, but once you get that many campsites put in, you're gonna have strong enough data to determine what an additional campsite's gonna add.
Well, if
Yeah.
it's measured, you can verify it.
and we have another resort that has stick-built cabins that has a requirement from some past zoning approvals that they provide meter data. And what I've seen over this last year of receiving that information is that their actual usage is about half or less of what the design flow for those systems were. And that resort has about a half dozen different systems that have been monitored. And and that's been consistent across all of them.
I have a question for Mr. Solien. This was asked of me in reading through the CUP from the Board of Adjustment. So you had said that you're gonna have cameras on where the flow is monitored. Do you plan to have someone on site all the time, living there during the season when the seasonal campers will be there?
Yeah, we'll be living on site.
And then you're planning to shut down the septic system in the cold weather? Or,
Making some spots, the cabin and a spot or two would be able to run in the winter months.
okay, but not the regular campsites?
A spot on there is designed to be able to function during the winter,
It is, okay. For all the campsites?
just the one.
Just the one, okay, thank you.
You don't think you'll have any issues of, with only a site that's built for a whole bunch of them, and then you drop down to this one cabin, you think there'll be any freezing issues?
Can I reply to that? I'm Jody Michel, Racer Construction. The pump panel going up to the mounds is gonna be a 4 alternating panel. And we're only doing 3 mounds just in case, due to measurement, we have to build the 4th mound. And we will be able to turn off 2 of the mounds in the winter time, so it doesn't alternate, it just goes to 1 of the mounds
Okay.
in the winter time, so you're gonna get more use in 1 mound to keep it from freezing.
Okay.
And when spring rolls around, Mike will go back and turn the switches on for the other 2 as people come in.
Does anyone have any further things they want to comment or ask on?
I think it would be a good idea to put in amendment number 9, after the entire, all 39 campsites are installed, and you have the cabin in, that you monitor again for a couple more years.
Board consensus, would that be all right?
I'd support that.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But I don't expand all 39 at the cabin.
I'm sorry,
But if I don't expand to all 39 sites, I stop at 24 for a period of time, or stop at 28 or 32.
I would say, once it's built out to the full amount, 39 and the cabin, then just monitor again for a couple more years.
So if I'm hearing the question and your response correctly, currently he has to monitor with the 24. And then if you build some but you don't get to full capacity, that doesn't kick in until everything is done.
Everything's done.
Is that your intention, Tom?
That would be my intention, yeah.
Okay,
So it could be indefinite.
Could go on as long until you do it, till you build all of them. Because I can also see not having to monitor
So what if
everything.
you had a circumstance where the usage was way under capacity before he finished, and it was kind of obvious that it was never gonna meet capacity even if he added the other ones? I would almost rather just leave it up to the discretion of environmental services to determine whether that is needed or not, based on the data that they've collected.
I think I heard Eric say he would like to have it monitored once you have
Because if
all
he
of them.
perceives it, if Eric perceives it as a potential problem, then he could ask for that data, because it's already in the conditions that we can ask for at any time.
because the data still has to be
Collected.
maintained. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
they-
have to be recorded in your office every time.
Right, yep. But we can certainly, if we have cause, request to see that.
If you have cause, would he be required to monitor then?
Well, as I mentioned, with this type of system, one of the requirements is that there be some mechanism for measuring the flow, and that data be collected on a daily basis for the life of the system. So it shouldn't be any different, as far as daily operations. They should be collecting that regardless, and then it's just a matter of whether they provide that data to us. So we can always ask for that if we have concern about the system's operation.
So in essence, your request is kind of built in there, we just have to ask for it, is all. It
Mr.
doesn't
Yale, okay.
force him to ask for it, but it's in there, in essence, if he asks for it.
But if you ask for it, is he required to start
Yes.
monitoring?
He's required to give
Or
him the data.
it's required that he monitor it regardless of whether it's provided to us. So that data always has to be gathered,
Indefinitely?
as long as that system's in operation.
So the data's always there, it's just whether the county requests to see the data.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I've informed Mike that he needs to monitor his water flows throughout the life of the system, because that, building upon design flow versus the flows that the state gives you is a huge amount of money difference. One system I did, because they had a water meter, it saved that particular scout camp out in Becker County about $50,000 on one system. So, water meters are, systems like this, water meters and collecting flow data all along is the smartest thing you can do.
Thank you. Okay, so Tom, do you want that in there, or are you okay with it just as is?
Are you okay with it as is? Okay.
Okay, so as it's written, and then the finding of the facts, is the board okay with what the, or just, okay. Are we ready to entertain a motion? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tom.
I'll move to approve as recommended from the planning commission, accepting their findings of facts for condition number 9.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? I just have one question. So if the system isn't put in and then there's a change that he wants to make to the system, does he have to bring that back to the planning commission?
No,
Hypothetically, I'm
No.
just asking.
as it's written, it just says that before any use that generates sewage can commence, they have to have a system that was designed, permitted, and passed inspection by the county, so that gives them that ability if something comes up, that they can amend the design and
Okay,
not have to revisit a hearing process.
okay. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thanks, Eric. Okay, Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to bring Bruce Kimmel online. He's in the Teams room here, and he's going to address item A first.
Hi, welcome.
Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, I've got a number of agenda items for you here today.
Could you stop for just a minute,
and-
Bruce? I'm not sure the public can hear him. Can you? Is that just a little bit?
Let's try again.
Okay, try it again, please.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I have a number of agenda items with you this morning, Commissioners. The first will be a review of the financial management plan that we have drafted for the county. This is a planning document. It is subject to change at any point over the course of a year, but we do believe it will be a helpful tool as part of your budgeting process for 2025 and beyond. So I'll go into that. But then we'll segue from there into the overall financing strategy for the jail and law enforcement center improvements, as well as the government center improvements that are planned for next year. There'll be a resolution following that, actually 2 resolutions following that item. And the last item will be to talk a little bit about a public hearing to come for a second bond issue that will be for the government center financing specifically. So hopefully these will all sort of flow together in a logical way, but please stop me along the way if you have any questions. It's been a while since the county has been in the bond market. You've also, excuse me, never done a long-term financial plan like this. So I expect some of this to be new, and you know, we definitely want your feedback and your questions. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. All right. So we were engaged by the county to prepare a financial management plan, or FMP. And an FMP is a multi-year financial plan for all tax-supported funds. And also in this case, we're including the solid waste fund as well. You can include you know, other funds that are pure enterprise funds. But mostly what we're looking to do is forecast the impact of certain planning decisions and spending decisions on future property taxes, tax rates, tax impacts, and so forth, as well as the impact on your fund balances, because that's really your bottom line, so to speak. And it's crucial that we not have a plan that, hey, we might be avoiding raising property taxes, but if we drain your fund balances, that's not a good outcome. So with this financial management plan, we really look to integrate capital planning, all of your near and medium term large capital projects, the debt service and obligations that might come from those capital planning decisions, estimated tax base changes in the coming years. We can either leave that fairly steady or account for a large increase like you had a couple of years ago. And then the operating revenues and expenses in your major tax supported funds as well. So what we're looking to do here, really, if you think about it, is there's sort of three legs of the stool. One is the capital planning leg, one is the operating budget leg, and the third is really the tax base and what we assume is happening there. And then we see the overall outlook based on those legs of the stool. So the result is that this plan will hopefully allow you to focus on the big picture and policy issues at the board level, really making sure that your staff is working the plan, that you're delivering on providing good quality roads, facilities, services, and so on to the taxpayers of Hubbard County, and that you're also maintaining your financial health. Again, that you're not spiking the tax rate, you're not draining fund balances, but that you're keeping things going steady as she goes, and that any major changes that are anticipated are known ahead of time, right? No surprises is kind of the goal here. And to that point, you know, the model can, depending on, again, the assumptions that are used, raise issues that will require some work over the next couple of years. We rarely have situations that are red flag, do not go, but sometimes there are yellow flags that get raised. And it's important that we and staff monitor your performance towards the county's objectives and in dealing with those yellow flag issues. And then thirdly, another big benefit of this kind of a financial planning process is that it really helps to inform the residents of the county's goals and priorities and how you intend to get there. This can give them confidence that you have a plan and that you're working the plan and that the plan hangs together. And of course, it can give you as the decision makers that confidence as well, that all of the major moving parts are being accounted for, and that you're not, you know, just about to walk off the edge of a fiscal cliff or anything like that in making some decisions about new facilities or whatever the case might be. So we really find that this helps with transparency and confidence both at the governing body level as well as with the public. So with a financial management plan and with county budgeting in general, what is funded? Well, so you of course have to maintain a healthy fund balance, and the projections in this model are designed to hit those targets. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but for the general fund, we're looking to maintain roughly at least a 50% of next year expenditure fund balance target. That's not sacrosanct, but we know that that's a goal for the county. And if you do ever need to dip below that, you would just want to have a plan for rebuilding that fund balance and be able to communicate that both to the public as well as to, say, the credit rating agencies. Of course, you need to provide expected county services and then to fund your capital plan. And it's the capital plan that often gets, if not neglected, it can sometimes get pushed aside to some extent or delayed beyond what it really should be. And so giving you again, the information and the confidence to really keep going with your capital plan as appropriate, as at the same time that you're providing these county services is really, again, one of the key benefits of the FMP. Some of the key assumptions, and I'm about to get to some of the actual results here, so thanks for your patience. We are assuming that the county's tax base will grow by a total of 3% annually. That should be a very conservative number, but an appropriately conservative one. That includes both inflation in existing values as well as growth in the tax base from new development, right? So it's two-pronged, and we are estimating that between those two prongs, the overall average growth is 3% per year. We assume that your non-capital expenses inflate by 4% per year. So that's staff wages, materials, all the things that go into operating the county, utility costs, etc. We're estimating most of those inflating by 4% annually. Capital costs increasing by 4% annually as well. So if we have an ongoing recurring capital cost that's in a fund budget, we are inflating that by 4% a year. Or if there is a capital cost in the CIP portion, we make sure that we're adding some inflation to that number if it's occurring in a later year. We also conservatively assume that your non-property tax revenues increase by 1% per year. That rate of increase has been more, especially for things like state aid in the last couple of years. But again, we don't want to over assume or be too optimistic there and thereby unrealistically estimate a lower than probable tax increase. So by holding those non-property tax revenues down, we are making sure that we're not being overly optimistic on the tax side of things. FTEs, this is a big item here in this projection for Hubbard County. And this is a great example of where, this is a placeholder and an expectation in this model. But we can also run, or you can run, or Jeff can run versions of the model that have different assumptions for FTEs, depending on what you actually want to do as the governing body. So again, every year this will get updated based on the decisions you make and how the situation on the ground there changes over the course of the year. And these numbers can be changed any which way in future iterations of the model. So we've got these markers here on the table, if you will, but again, this is something that you could direct staff to experiment with and see what that means for the overall outlook for the county. So why is the general fund balance so important? Well, I don't think I need to tell you commissioners this, but it might be helpful for some other folks listening. As you know, you get paid twice a year, right? The county, the vast majority of the county's revenues come in with the property tax settlements in May and October, respectively, and really get the money. And so it's really, especially that first almost half of the year, you're paying all those costs of operating the county from reserves, and not everything can be planned for. So we really want to make sure that no matter what, you are maintaining adequate reserves for a rainy day, for emergency situations, and so that you can pay those day-to-day expenses without having to do all sorts of, back and forth financial machinations between funds to just keep things afloat. And so that goal of 50% of unassigned fund balance is very common. I work with some counties that are higher than that, some other counties that are a little bit lower than that, but 50% is really kind of the gold standard for counties, and because you do rely so heavily on property taxes. Before I talk about the capital improvements, any questions about the slides that we've covered so far?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you. So you've got a number of capital improvements on the plate for the next 5 or 6 years. And we've included all of these in the FMP model with the dates and amounts shown here. With, again, those costs being in 2024 dollars. So the numbers increasing a little bit for the projects, especially the potential courts and public safety addition in the year 2030, as well as the later parks development costs. We've inflated those a little bit to account for likely cost inflation in future years. Again, I would just reiterate that these are based on your plans to date, and we do have a game plan that we'll be presenting to you here this morning for the first 2 lines, the jail remodel and the court government center renovation. But it's always up to you, of course, in deciding when to execute on any project and at what dollar amount. So these are the numbers that are in the budget, or in the FMP, excuse me. But again, this is all subject to future discussion and change as appropriate. The Road and Bridge Fund, we've got, so I'll show you this in a little bit back to the capital projects, but we've got estimates in the model for what the impact will be for these capital projects, and then moving on to the Road and Bridge Fund. All of this is pretty much sort of status quo, steady as she goes, but we are looking to maintain a fund balance equal to 50% of the next year's OPEX and 35% of your rolling average of capital expenses for those funds, for that fund. And you do very well staying at or above that fund balance target, which is the orange line. The blue bars are what we're actually estimating for the fund balance, and you can see that while at the latter part of the 10-year planning horizon, we do sort of match up there. 10 years is a really long time to model out, right? 5 years is a long time to model out. And so I don't have any qualms or concerns about sort of those 2 lines meeting up, because so many things will change between now and the year 2034. So Road and Bridge looks to be in strong shape. Social services funds, of course, that you have multiple funding sources there, and the use or the purpose of the social services fund. Here, because you do have a more diversified revenue stream with the federal and the state funds, as well as property taxes, we think that 40% would be an appropriate fund balance target. And here again, we're looking at adding 3 new FTEs annually beginning in 2026. So as you can imagine, that's a significant driver of the social services projections, which are here, and we can also get you the full workbook, but each one of these funds has its own projection page, which then ties into the summary page that was part of your board packet over the weekend. So you can see with the staffing in particular on line 3, that's where these new staffers come into effect. And that's a major driver, and you may see fit to either accelerate that or decelerate that or do something different.
Bruce, I have a question for you or Jeff. So how did you come up with the future staffing needs? Because that seems really excessive when you think of over 10 years, how many staff we would add.
I know that number seems excessive, and it is put here as a point of conversation, but we have to be realistic with the state and the number of programs that they have and the changes that they're making to the programs. That number's not 0.
No, I understand that.
So-
And I think you're going a little high maybe to safeguard.
I think we're going a little high too, because
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly discussing that number, but if you look at the projections of 2 staff to general government and 3 to human services, that's 5 on an annual basis, and that is 2% growth on our labor force annually. So if it's not someplace, it's gonna be another place, and 2% growth on the labor force is, I think, a good bookmark for planning. That doesn't mean that every year that we're not scrutinizing and determining whether that we're actually gonna add that position or not add that position. But for modeling to a 5 and 10 year period, I think it really helps to identify the soft spots in the plan. And if you switch that around and say 2 in human services and 3 in general government, it's the same number of 2% growth on the number of employees that we have. And if it should be 4, so that it's 1.5% growth, that these are exactly points to be discussed. But we know that the number's not 0 over a period of time, so.
50 over 10 years seems like a.
And I should also point out, I misspoke a little bit in that, and again, we can revisit the numbers here, but as you can probably discern from how these numbers trend, we're quote, only adding 3 per year through the year 2031, and then that's just inflation after that. So it looks like it's 18 people total. Again, that probably is high. I would have to check with my team as to where all that came from, but that's what this trend line is showing here on line 3.
And as each year goes by, and say like 1 year where you have 8% increase and we only do like a 5%, you can adjust that each year as we go by going forward real easily?
Exactly.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
This model is a large spreadsheet, a lot of connected pages and spreadsheets, and you can change assumptions in any number of key areas that are going to, in the end, they're gonna solve for what's the property tax levy that we need to allocate to carry this plan forward, right? So you deal with all of the elements of the plan, and then it's gonna kick back and say, based on your current fund balance, your debt service, your capital needs, this is what you're gonna need for levy to support that program. I go back to the capital projects list, and you don't have to, Bruce, but the item 3, the connecting piece between these 2 buildings was identified. We've been carrying that on our capital plan, but we're kicking it down the road because we have no actual plans to do that yet. Now, there may be a time and there may be events that trigger us saying we should begin working on that, but it's, if we decided today we should be working on that, it's at least 5 years out. So that's why the horizon is that far. And then we've also talked with, Deep Lake Park Development is largely dependent on grants, right? But we know any grant that we have, we're gonna have at least a 20% match. So again, the things that are in here came from the capital plans that we submitted from the general fund, the highway fund, and the, solid waste fund. So we'll see that a lot of what's in there is the data that we've had and we've known, and we're not looking at it, the impact of it 5 years down the road. That's what this process is gonna help us do.
I would have hated to have to figure this out 2 years ago or 3 years ago with inflation the way it was, but at least we're settling down to a more normal inflation rate now. Be more predictable.
That would be the hope, right? And certainly I think most economic experts would say so. Of course, everything can change again, but I think the recent disruptive years, post-pandemics notwithstanding, we should, if you look at historical data, usually there is a more steady inflation rate. And the nice thing also about this model, though, is if we keep having the volatility that we've had over the last several years, we can always model with volatility as well. And like Jeff said, this is really just a really big interconnected Excel workbook, and it takes all of 5 seconds to change the inflation assumptions, if that. Okay. So solid waste, we're looking at, again, a 40% fund balance goal, again, because you have both the property taxes as well as the other revenues that come in over the course of the year for the waste disposal facility. And we do have assumptions regarding capital equipment and the landfill closure costs. I won't go into that a whole lot, but we are projecting a little bit of a deficit, or there has been a deficit, and one that may be continuing to some extent. And so we are looking and would encourage you to discuss further with your staff the possibility of increasing those annual assessments in 2025 and beyond to just right-size the budget for solid waste and to make sure you're not having to continue to make interfund loans or transfers to that fund.
And we know we have capital equipment costs, we know we have closing costs, we know we have a major project looming that's multi-million dollars. How we end up partnering with the state to make that happen is one thing or another, but again, this is taking the numbers that Josh has put to pencil for some of those costs, but we haven't identified, and this is what's good about this process. When Bruce gives this to his staff and I give them those pieces of paper and they look at it and they say, well, are you bonding to cover that cost? And I'm like, no, we're waiting for the state to resolve how that's gonna happen. But we are gonna have a cost related to that. So there's two, you're gonna see that there's two fund balances that are not necessarily in great shape. One is solid waste and one is human services. And we just saw that and we kind of got over that, but we'll put that into more context. The good news is the county as a whole is meeting those goals, but those two funds specifically are not necessarily meeting the goal that he and I discussed, and we put in those outlines, summaries about each of the funds.
So is that negative balance in solid waste a direct reflection of capping the capital expense to cap the thing? Or is the capital money we were gonna use to prepay that and then use the levy to catch up?
Yeah.
Or is that already in there?
There-
And this
there's-
is over and above that?
There's a portion of that, in 22 and 23, you'll see that. In 24, you'll see that we had some projected, we've got some payback dollars in there. But there's also some projects that Josh had on his list that we haven't actually funded yet, and we haven't decided that we're going to do yet, but if our license expires in the end of the 20s for operating our demo landfill, our capital needs to find a solution to that are imminent. So identifying this now is really good. When we see that spike in 2027, that shows a $1.7 million shortfall. That's when I think he put on there a major renovation to one of the facilities. It's about a $1.5 million facility renovation. So you have to look at this and then look at those capital plans. This will help us refine the capital plans, make sure that we're stretching them out, and then keep looking for solutions relative to, is this going to be county funded? Is this going to be a joint program with the state? How is that going to happen? It gives us some more detail on the local impact to take to the legislature to say, we can't do these things on our own. We can't put those costs on the cost of disposal, or people are just gonna not dispose properly, right? So it's gonna give us a lot of data that we're gonna need.
Good, great feedback, and I've been making some notes here to follow up with Jeff on, and also to incorporate into the final version of what we deliver to you here with this process. General fund, I won't go into this in too much detail. We've already covered a lot of it, but again, there is some additional staffing that is projected. This is a very truncated version of the page. But what you see is that the fund balance goes down over as a percentage of expenditures. It decreases because we're not essentially as your expenses grow each year, even if you keep a relatively stable ending fund balance or a growing fund balance, you can see that it becomes a smaller percentage of the budget. And so that's just something to monitor. It's not a crisis. It's not anything that needs to be resolved this year or right away, but it's just a simple dynamic that as your dollar expenses grow, your fund balance may be decreasing as a percentage of those expenditures.
So would you find, Bruce, that that's pretty common across most counties because of the inflation anomaly here, and that as that levels out, this will probably tame down a bit?
It is, and we do see some counties that deliberately budget for either a highly detailed amount or sort of placeholders saying we're going to add $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 to our fund balance in a given year, or we're going to budget to do that so that we can sort of just boost the percentage back up a little bit. So hopefully, it'll be a combination of reduced inflation will help modify or mitigate that need, but you might also look to have some contingencies essentially built into your budget that can help to keep that percentage afloat as well. And then the summary page, you saw a very large and number-filled copy of this, but the summary page is where everything comes together. It's where the levies for road and bridge, social services, capital improvement come in. It's your existing debt service. You can see that at the top of the page. It's your general fund tax levy. I guess that's at the very top of the page. And all of this comes together to give you a sense of what your overall levy might be and what the impact will be to taxpayers based on certain tax base assumptions. So the real nitty-gritty, if you will, isn't the tax rate or the levy change. It's the estimated dollar impact of the county's taxes. You can see that on average, over this planning period, given this set of assumptions, which include all of those new staffers, right, and it includes a lot of inflation as well. But we are showing that the average impact per year on a single family home would be about $60, adding $60 to that county tax levy per year. So as you can see, if you test different assumptions on any number of factors, that's either going to lead to a lower estimated impact or a higher one. But I'm guessing that most of the changes that you might make in future years would lead to a lower impact than what we're showing in this framework.
So I'm looking at this,
Any-
Bruce, and it appears it's missing the CIP bonds.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. The CIP bonds are in this line
That one,
here.
okay.
And it's actually multiple CIP bonds, including one for that social services building that might happen in 2023. Yeah, I'm sorry, that is a little confusing in that we include the jail bonds that we are estimating the county will issue this fall as sort of real debt, right, along with your 2020 bonds. But then the future capital bonds in 25 and beyond are part of this line number 10.
Thank you.
Yep. So takeaways would be that you're in really good shape overall. Jeff mentioned some of the things that you'll continue to look at on the operating side and the capital side. And this tool, I think, will be very useful for your senior leadership as well as yourselves to evaluate those future decisions. But I think what's really key is that we don't really see any red flags here, and you're well balanced. It's not going to be difficult to keep you at your target fund balances, at least in the long term. So what we're looking for is, again, more feedback from you either today or along the way, and then we'll make a few additional changes, and you can use this then as a reference point for your 2025 budget process. And that's all I have for you on the FMP.
So we'll have an opportunity to review that and discuss that, and Bruce will be here. We're going to be here on the 17th, right, of September?
Correct. Yes.
September
Yep.
17th is lining up to be a busy meeting too. But we'll make a little space to ask some questions and actually bring that model out and probably do some work with it. We probably bring it forward at the general government meeting the week before and just have an opportunity to, well, what if we change this to here? How does that look? What does this do? What are the other things that are going into that? And this was the way that it was because when we last met last week, there were some other questions related to timing of projects or sources of funds for other projects that we hadn't done. And as always, they try to estimate very conservatively, estimating that the market value tax capacity of the county is going to grow at 3% a year is very low based on what we've known the last 5 or 6 or 10 years. But we'd rather play it that way than the other way. So all of those numbers are relatively conservative and need to be adjusted as you get to be the 2 or 3 year horizon. It's really, like you said, it's really hard to predict 5 to 10 years out, but it's good to have that much of a plan to show the impact.
And the last thing I would just note, I did allude to the rating agencies, but given that you are issuing this debt or likely issuing debt this fall and also then next year, the rating agencies think this kind of a planning exercise is really the mark of a well-managed county in terms of looking out over the horizon, making sure that there aren't any surprises, and planning for the orderly completion of capital projects and keeping your service delivery going. So we look forward to sharing this also with S&P when we talk with them relative to the upcoming bond issue.
Are there any questions or comments for Bruce?
I like that we're looking 10 years out.
Great. Well, if there's nothing else right now, I think we can move to the capital funding strategy.
I am just trying to get my screens to line up here. There we go.
And are you pulling up that document or?
I am.
Oh, great. Perfect.
I am.
Okay.
So I think I can pull the rest of them up.
Wonderful. Okay, well, Madam Chair and Commissioners, this next item is a memo that I drafted for you that just explains a little bit about why we are suggesting the approach we are relative to funding the jail and LAC projects, as well as the government center project. And so I don't need to go through all of this narrative that's on the bottom of page 1 and then most of page 2. But I did just want to note that we continue to think that this first jail bond will do exceedingly well because it is bank qualified, and as well as it will feature the state credit enhancement and the AAA rating that goes with that. In addition, we expect a very strong underlying rating for the county, so sort of the dual effect of having those two ratings in tandem should attract a lot of borrowers, or excuse me, a lot of investors to this financing. We often will see upwards of, I don't want to predict anything, but on this kind of larger bond issue, and with these features, it would not surprise me to see upwards of 6 or 8 bidders on the financing come the date of sale, which will be September 17th. And then I think having the ability to pick up any remaining jail and LAC costs, as well as doing the government center financing with the CIP bonds next year, is also a really nice way to just true up everything and make sure that you're bonding for the right amounts for all of the projects. We can also, fine tune the debt service structure for the CIP bonds in 2025 based on the structure that we end up with on the 2024 bonds. And so there's just going to be a nice sort of ability to make everything come out the way you want and that your team wants by doing a two-phase process. And in addition, as I note, the second bond issue will also be bank qualified. It will not have the state credit enhancement, but the BQ benefit should also help significantly with that second financing next year, whenever that might occur. So before I go into the pre-sale report for the jail bonds, are there any questions about the strategy, the two-phase strategy of funding the jail, most of the jail and law enforcement center costs here this year, and then doing whatever additional financing we need for the jail and law enforcement center, as well as the government center next year?
So the primary question everyone probably has is, the last number we saw was about $12.5 million for this whole thing. Yep. And as I've had conversations with the construction manager, they're within 1.5% of that. So as they've gone through design development and their anticipation of coming into the bid season means that's still the number we're looking at. And in several conversations with Bruce and his colleagues, breaking this up and doing the 10 million by the jail bonds with that credit rating made sense because that's the cheapest money we're going to get for there. And then holding off for the second one until we know exactly, is that 2.4, 2.5, 2.6? How much fund balance do we have available to use? Determining, we know it's about $2.5 million that we're going to be borrowing on that second CIP bond. But we don't know the exact number yet. And that's why we came up with the strategy of the two issuances. it also continues to work with the timing of the retiring of the existing debt.
Right, and Jeff, I'm glad you mentioned that. As you probably remember, commissioners, you do have a large drop-off in your debt next year, and we are working around that with both of these bond issues and the interest payments that you would have on the new debt. Okay. Well, then let me, if there's no questions about the big picture strategy, Jeff, if you would pull up the pre-sale report then for the jail bonds, I will just hit a few high points there.
Hang on a second.
Or I can do it on my screen
No,
too.
I can do this. I can do this more efficiently.
Okay. Great. Wonderful. So this document is really a blueprint, sort of a plan of finance specifically for the jail bond issue that we're talking about for next month. And so we are looking at a $10 million par amount or face value of this bond issue. That number will not change. What might change or will likely change is how much we actually yield from that bond issue. One thing I just want to make you aware of is that because of something called premium bidding, and we expect to receive premium pricing on the winning bid next month, you very likely will net more than $10 million of project proceeds from a $10 million issue, which seems kind of crazy, I know, but it's basically because investors want higher coupons on the bonds that they buy, and the coupon is the face interest rate, even though the true yield on those bonds is going to be significantly lower than the coupon. And so that dynamic between that higher sort of face coupon or face interest rate versus the true yield is what generates this additional funding called the premium that we can then capture and use to pay the cost of issuance on the bond issue, as well as to put more money into the project fund. So there also is a benefit of doing the two-phase issue. We may not need to do a follow-up financing of any sort for the jail project come next year, or it may be a very small amount, or you may decide to use a little bit of cash to do that. And so lots of options and flexibility after we know the results of this fall's bond issue. A few points. We made sure that you are following all the legal requirements under Minnesota state law, which you are. These are general obligation bonds, which means you're pledging your full faith and credit, including your future taxing powers, to the timely repayment of this debt. We are looking at a total debt term of just over 21 years, and you'll have a couple of interest payments that start in August of next year, but then principal will occur starting in February 1 of 27 through 46. And that again is to account for the drop off of your debt in 25, 26. So we feel good about that structure lining up with the county's existing realities. In addition, you will have the opportunity to invest these bond proceeds at a very high interest rate, higher probably than the bond yield, while they're being drawn down for the jail and law enforcement center project. We can help you with that investment plan if you'd like, but regardless, you will be able to earn quite a bit of interest that you can then use to pay the debt service, the interest expense in 2025, and not have a levy requirement for that. So we've already talked with Jeff about that. We'll talk more with Jeff and Kay about executing on that plan. But that will be a goal, is to make sure that we're timing up the investments of the bond proceeds so that obviously the money is ready to go when you need it, but also so that the interest earnings are as high as possible. BQ, we've already talked about that. We've talked about state credit enhancement. And so going on to the next page, we will be doing a competitive bond sale. The county has done that previously, including with your 2020 bonds, where we will solicit bids from underwriting firms all over the country. They will submit those bids on Monday, the 16th of September. And then I will be with you on the 17th, at your meeting on the 17th, to award the bonds to the winning bidder. We've talked about premium pricing. There are no refunding opportunities, arbitrage monitoring. So that's pretty much it. For this, I just would note the calendar. We're here today for the pre-sale review and to get your blessing to move forward. We will be talking with the rating agency next week, distributing the official statement to the market shortly after Labor Day, and then again awarding the bonds on the 17th with closing in early October. We also have included the estimated debt service schedules, with debt service at around $745,000 per year. And I would welcome any questions that you might have about the pre-sale report.
Is October 9th, is that the date that the county would receive the 10 million?
Correct.
Okay, and then, yeah, because there's a possibility interest rates will be moving on down, so that would be a good idea, and maybe to get some of that invested pretty quickly.
Correct, exactly. And that's where having a draw schedule, at least maybe not completely fine-tuned, but a draw schedule would be really nice, because right now we can invest out in agencies and other approved securities, fixed income securities, to really capture the current interest rate environment. And so even when rates start to come down, you will be invested at the current higher rates. So yes, we definitely look to jump on that right at closing, actually, not waiting around on that.
And do you have a drawdown schedule as far as construction, so you can time your, however you invest it to that drawdown?
I have a preliminary
Just-
schedule.
Yeah, yep.
Yep, we're obviously intent on maximizing the impact of that.
Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, Madam Chair and Commissioners, there are two resolutions before you. One is to give us the green light on the sale of the bonds. Of course, you'll still need to approve the sale of the bonds on September 17th, but this allows us to move forward on your behalf. And then the second resolution is to greenlight entering into that credit enhancement agreement with the state PFA.
So which one do you want first?
So the first one is this one that's on the screen, providing for the sale of general obligation bonds, Series 2024A. In the
I can move to approve the resolution authorizing the sale of 10 million general obligation jail bond series 2024A.
Okay, so Dave moves.
I'll second.
Okay, Tom seconds. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then the second resolution, as mentioned, is this credit enhancement, opt into a credit enhancement program with the state.
Okay, someone make a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Ted and Steve, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then Bruce, I believe the final item,
Right, is simply to set the public hearing that is required for the future government center bonds or GOCIP bonds for September 17th. Again, we don't expect you actually to issue these bonds until sometime next spring, most likely. But since we're going to be going through this process anyways on the jail bonds and everything is sort of interconnected as part of the county's capital plan, we felt it would be a good idea to simply just take care of the public hearing requirement for this type of bond for the CIP bonds. And with the not to exceed amount, I think 3 million is probably a good not to exceed, knowing that, as Jeff mentioned, you're probably going to be well lower than that.
So Jeff, do we set this at 9:32 and we just take it one at a time?
no, thank you, Madam Chair. I would suggest for two reasons. One, that Bruce is coming from St. Paul.
Yeah,
And two, that we already have 3 public hearings at 9:30.
right.
That we make this one 10 o'clock or 10:30. Which, is either time better for you, Bruce?
No, either one is just fine.
I would say 10 a.m. for this one.
Okay.
I don't expect a lot of public comment at the ordinance updates, which means we can do those at 9:30 through 9:40 conversation, take action on the proposed ordinance amendments, and still roll into this one by 10 o'clock.
Okay. Someone like to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, to hold the public hearing at 10 o'clock on September 17th. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Steve seconds, okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
That, Madam Chair, I think is all that we have for today, unless there
Okay.
are other committee reports that you have.
All right, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. And Jeff, should I stick around for HRA EDA, or what would you like to do?
If you want to hang on, we can do that. We're gonna be out of here in about 10 minutes and then start, or less, and then starting up with that one right after.
Okay, I will just mute myself and turn off my camera, and I'll see you shortly.
All right, thanks, Bruce.
We have a department managers meeting.
You have, what?
Department managers.
Yeah,
meeting.
whose turn is it to go on Tuesday?
I think
It's Tom's? Okay, so Tom will attend with me. Okay, and no one plans to go to the Sourcewell training on cyber security, okay? And is there anything else for committee reports? Okay, so can we adjourn? Is there anything else?
Nope, we have nothing else. We can adjourn.
Okay. Who moves to adjourn?
So moved.
Ted will move.
I'll second.
Steve will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right,
I need
thanks.
to take
everyone.